old-fashioned phone. Ultimately, everyone needs to have a smartphone because that will leapfrog the necessity of having laptops or desktops in the home. So those are things that I think are opportunities and could use a bit more investment.
All right. And inevitably, the digital transformational revolution has disrupted a lot of businesses. How various industries operated before has been disrupted. The COVID-19 pandemic came and the effects of the same just came and, leapfrogged it, as we said, because leapfrog seems to be the word of the day for now. For instance, the media, and the ladies and gentlemen here who I work with and are in this industry would tell you how much it has been disrupted. So what do you think are some of the ways that, for instance, industries such as the media, which have been significantly disrupted by tech, can adapt to remain sustainable?
Well, I think the media industry, not just in Kenya, but worldwide, is being disrupted by the digital economy. In fact, it happened earlier in many countries of the world than it's happening here. And let me just underscore the importance of the fourth estate, which is the media, to flourishing democracies. I think we saw that in Kenya's most recent election, which by all accounts was the freest, fairest, most transparent election in Kenya history. And a lot of that was because of the strength of the media industry here. What I will say is I think because of digital disruption, the media industry in Kenya, and Stephen can comment even better than I, is under tremendous financial pressure because the old revenue sources of advertising based in print newspapers is being completely upended. And there has been, in every country, a major, major disruption. Lots of media companies have gone out of business. In the United States, the next generation of 18 to 34-year-olds, they don't watch TV anymore. They don't listen to radio anymore. Their entire mechanism for getting their news and information is their smartphone and the apps on those smartphones. In my view, there are two different kinds of innovation and two kinds of disruption. In innovation, first of all, there's what I would call evolutionary innovation, which is where things change a bit. You need to make things marginally better. And then there is disruptive innovation. Disruptive innovation puts companies out of business. And what's happening in the media industry is truly disruptive innovation. Everything has to be questioned. Every way that companies do business has to be questioned. And it's super scary if you're an incumbent. It's really hard. In some ways, and this is the benefit of the digital economy, if you don't have a legacy business, it's easier. When I ran eBay, it was way easier to create a marketplace than it was for Walmart. The land-based retail global leader, or United States leader, had a lot of trouble reacting to someone who had no land-based infrastructure. So I think it's super important that the media really think through how are they going to compete in the next 5 years, forget 10 years or 15 years, how do you make it through the transition? And there are media enterprises in the United States and Europe who have done that. Paywalls, digital only, lots of different challenges, but the media, you're all in a hot spot right now. And it's going to require really dramatic, transformative thinking. And quite a bit of risk, I think. When you have to take 1 foot off of one rock before you got your foot on the other rock, it's pretty scary.
It really is. It really is. And when you talk about the disruption, and you've mentioned about how it eventually brings to question almost every function of an organization. Now, we've seen the increased uptake of technology has inevitably caused many jobs to fall redundant. So you find, especially maybe someone has an organization that is a factory, for instance, and we bring in this machine which is full of tech, and if the guy was running a business with 1,000 staff, about maybe 400 are now rendered redundant because of this machinery, this technology. So how then should we ensure that we are staying in step with the time, so that we are also training people enough to take up the new job, so that we already have a burdensome, unemployment situation, just to avoid that being the case?
So I think one of the things that I would be thinking about for Kenya is most countries of the world started as agrarian economies, where, like Kenya today, 70% of the people work in the agriculture sector. Then moved to the manufacturing sector, to what we would call industrialization, version 1.0, I suppose. And those are factories. And then began to move to the digital economy. I think that given where Kenya is, it would be important not to miss that middle step. Because not every factory is going to be automated in the next 10 years. Not every factory is going to be run by robotics, particularly in Kenya. And I have been struck by going back to this notion of supply chain diversification. Every apparel company in the world is trying to think, how do we diversify out of maybe Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, China, Vietnam, to other places in the world? And again, Kenya looks fantastic on those dimensions. Great workforce, English speaking. There's two apparel companies who've gone to Ati River in 2020 who now employ 25,000 people in just 2 years. So I wouldn't try to leap over creating that industrial bedrock of factories that can employ lots of people in the near term. It doesn't mean that every business isn't at some level a tech business. It doesn't mean that the K through 12 students in this country shouldn't be well equipped with science, technology, engineering, math, all the basic skills. But I do think there's a real role for bringing lots of what I would call factory jobs here. And the CS mentioned some of them, building smartphone handsets, building electronics. Those are tech jobs in a way, but Kenya's incredibly well suited and they do employ a lot of people. The problem, if there is one with the digital economy, is per dollar of revenue, the big tech companies employ many less people per dollar of revenue than a big manufacturing company. So I just think it has to be balanced here because the youth unemployment challenges are a challenge here. And I think Kenya should just think about how to balance that between agriculture, factories, if you will, and the digital economy.
All right, and when you talk about, I mean, it's a global space, and so how then can, in your view, Kenya position itself to be attractive to investors, especially in the digital economy, in terms of be it regulations or otherwise? And is this something that you talk to government about?
Yeah. So, listen, I think Kenya is a standout on the African continent today. But in terms of particularly foreign direct investment, I can tell you as the CEO of two Fortune 50 American companies, I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about Africa. There's always a challenge in the United States, a problem in Europe, an opportunity in Asia. And so I think that Africa in general and Kenya specifically needs to tell its story more effectively outside of Africa. And so that's what I would call the narrative. Why Africa? Why Kenya? And that could be, I think, a very powerful, it sounds quite simple, but a powerful narrative of how do we tell the story of Africa and the story of Kenya outside of the continent. And there's a number of ideas there. Every foreign trade mission should be able to say why Africa, why Kenya in just a few minutes. The second, and I mentioned it, is the climate to attract investment and frankly to attract entrepreneurs, Kenyan entrepreneurs, to invest their time and effort in this country. And those are a set of legal regulatory frameworks, some of which the Cabinet Secretary talked about, just to make it, again, the most attractive place in Africa, the most attractive place in the world to invest. And there's probably 10 different initiatives that could probably make a pretty big difference here, one of which I mentioned was comporting to the OEC two-pillar framework, but there are others as well, one of which would be the domestic equity rule, which 1/3 of ICT companies here need to have domestic shareholders. That is a challenge for foreign direct investment. So those are the kinds of things, I think those two, the narrative of why Africa, why Kenya, and making sure that the legal and regulatory and policy framework is as welcoming as can be.
So is it that, there are some American companies, I should say, that would more easily come and invest in Kenya if there was no requirement for the directorship kind of balance?
Yes.
All right. So that is, I'm glad the CS is here. And that's a good message to him. And as we come to a close, you mentioned about, there's the big companies and the small ones as well. And we have a mix of those represented here. What would your advice be to the smaller companies? I mean, when we're online, we are in some ways on an equal play field, but in terms of resources, we are not. So those who would want to compete with the big boys and the big girls, what would your advice be to them so that they do not end up, there's the statistic of such a large percentage of small businesses dying out by the time they are 5. So what would your guidance be to them on that?
Well, first of all, being an entrepreneur and starting companies is the most exciting thing that I think any of you could ever do. It's also risky, right? At least in the United States, 9 out of 10 startups fail. So failure is, in Silicon Valley, failure is not a badge of dishonor, it's a badge of honor. And what you learn in those failures, you apply to successes later on. But I would say small companies in many ways have big advantages versus the very largest tech companies. And that might be counterintuitive because you say, well, these companies have so many resources and so much money and so many people. But the downside of big companies is they can't move as fast, right? We used to say at eBay, grow big while staying small. And that's hard to do. It's so hard to do because as you get big, there's more bureaucracy, there's more decision makers, there's more reasons to say no at a big company. And so think of speed, agility, the ability to pivot quite fast, the ability to test and iterate. If you're a little company and you make a mistake, it's okay. When I was at HP, when HP made a mistake, it was national news. So you have a chance to be more innovative and more ability to do rapid revisions of your product. And so I would just say, figure out a great business opportunity and then test and iterate on that business opportunity. It may be not the first thing you try. It may be number 2 or number 3 or number 4. But small, nimble companies can often outcompete big companies all day long.
You've spoken about, failing at times is not necessarily the end of the road. Might you have any personal examples of when you failed and how you picked up and moved on, which I feel would be of great insight to someone who probably is having a struggling business or they have failed X number of times?
Yeah. So I think almost anyone who is an entrepreneur or has worked in a career in technology has had a failure or two. And then sometimes we have failures, in other parts of our lives as well. And I'll give you 2 examples. So many of you may know I ran for governor of California. California, if it was a country, would be the 5th largest country in the world, just the California economy. And so I ran a very public campaign for governor of California, which I lost by 12 points. And, that is a failure of epic proportions. It's a very public failure as well. And so how do you recover from something like that? You basically have to say, you know what? I did the very best I could. It was not a success. And, you have to sort of, in the proverbial, you got to get back on the horse. If the horse threw you off, you got to get back on that horse. So you just have to use tremendous mental fortitude and just say, okay, what am I going to do next? And my next was the CEO of Hewlett-Packard. So you never know what's going to come to you. After Hewlett-Packard, I stepped down and I started a very high-quality video company for your mobile phone called Quibi, short for Quick Bites. And I did this with Jeffrey Katzenberg, who many of you may know is a Hollywood longtime superstar. And so it was the combination of Jeffrey's expertise in content, short-form movies for your smartphone, and my expertise in technology. And we launched in the 3rd week of COVID. And the idea was this was short-form video for your high-quality short-form video for your mobile phone while you were on the go, commuting, waiting in line at the supermarket, whatever. And of course, no one was on the go, no one was commuting, and no one was waiting in any lines. So it was a dramatic failure, and again, quite a public failure. But we recognized it early, and we decided to shut down the company after just 6 months and return most of the money to shareholders. But again, a public a failure. And so you just have to say, you know what? you give it your best shot, you do everything you can, you be smart about it, and then decide, what you can do next. And, you never know what opportunities are going to come your way.
And now that we are back on the move, is there a chance that Quib will come back?
Say again?
Considering we are back on the move, now, the restrictions have been lifted and the likes.
No, I don't think so, at least not by Jeffrey Katzenberg and myself. I do think that high quality, content for your mobile phone will be something, but it will be done by someone else, not by us.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, let's appreciate the U.S. Ambassador to Kenya. And it's important to note that Kenya is hosting the First Lady of the United States tomorrow. And so you can imagine the kind of schedule she has. So just being here is a great sacrifice and a great commitment. She committed months ago, and though this development is more recent, she still chose to be here with us, and so we are very grateful for that.
Well, let me say one thing about that. I'm a big believer when you say you're going to do something, you do it. And I committed to you and Stephen, I think in October. And as you say, it's not the most convenient time because the First Lady is arriving tomorrow, but as I said, when you say you're going to do something, you do it, and I couldn't be more pleased to be part of this. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, let's appreciate her one more time. And as is expected, she will be taking her leave now because she has to head back to Nairobi. So we are going to have a photo session with the ambassador, the CEO, the CS. We won't do it here, or do we do it outside? You can do it outside, okay. You can do it outside. Thank you very much for that. And Madam Ambassador, I wish you safe travels alongside your team and all the best as you plan for the arrival and time here of floaters. So, ladies and gentlemen, now we get into our next session, which is a panel discussion. And so I will request that I think we have to have a bit of additional seats brought up so we can have them here as I get my panelists to come. Yeah, so on this discussion, we are having the topic of this discussion is adopting digital technologies for business growth. The panelists are Masi Mutemi, who's the managing partner of Nzili and Sumbi Advocates. She's also an internet law and policy advocate. We also have Kelvin Joka, head of products and strategy, digital and innovation at the Diamond Trust Bank. And we also have David Omoyo, the Chief Executive Officer of the Media Council of Kenya. And we have Dr. Ehud Gishugu, who is the Project Director at Jira Digital Project at the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. So I will invite the good people I've just mentioned to come and join me on stage. Yes, karibuni sana.
Even when you talk about surveillance for security purposes, a lot of us own buildings, and for us security is important. What kind of surveillance have you put in place? Do people need a retina scan, for example, to enter into your buildings? That's good for you because you want to ensure security to the maximum, but is that good, for privacy? So you have to look at the technology itself. But beyond that, it's consumer protection. You're in the advertising space as businesses. Of course, you're taking up the space to be seen and to be heard on social media. But are you really thinking through what is allowable in terms of marketing? Are you sticking to fair use practices in terms of what your people can say or not? When you engage influencers, are they sticking to what they need to say? Other area that is going to become a problem that we have already seen so far is the labor. yesterday, while Daktari was talking about how they had to leverage, it's going to get to a place where you're possibly going to automate everything about your business processes. And you're going to digitize everything. And then you'll ask yourself, do I really need a 1,000 people workforce? And that is going to become a legal challenge if you don't handle that situation with care. Because at the same time, tech presents a very unique problem. It's not that you don't need people, it's that you don't need them in the traditional sense. So it's like a new workforce, a new employment structure that's necessary just specifically for the tech. And how a lot of people have done it, the shortcut is to, throw it into the gig economy, even for very sensitive jobs. But then that presents another issue, which is the intellectual property problem, which again, if you don't handle it correctly, is going to become a really, really big problem. So what does the workforce for a tech future look like? If I'm digitizing, then what should I really do about my labor? If I want people to work from home, to have that freedom to work from home, am I also encouraging them to, be free at the new workstation, or do I want to track every keypad strike, every mouse click? Do I want their cameras to be on at all times, and what kind of privacy issues does that bring out? Again, I think the last thing just on this issue is our social media presence. We really want to be seen, and we really want those TikTok accounts, but is to think about, as a company, as the government, as institutions, what mobile handsets are we using for this? How much information do we want to give the algorithm, and what kind of legal problems could we find ourselves in? So as you can see, there's a multiplicity of legal problems that you could end up in, but generally, as you adapt tech, you need to step back and really ask yourself, what legal traps am I setting for myself, so that you can cover those traps beforehand.
All right, thank you for that. And we shall be getting into this so you can get some specifics excuse me, as to what potential opportunities and challenges there are in regards to the law and the digital growth. Kevin, I want to come back to you. And again, because of where you sit, we've seen instances where, say, banks are hacked, or you find, we had some cases not too long ago where we had some guys saying they've received random money from a bank. And this is a lot of the technology base. It's based on technology. So how do you safeguard yourselves, as you roll out your products and the technologies? Because the technologies have a lot of benefits, but some of these setbacks. So what do you do to sort of safeguard yourselves and ultimately your clients?
Good question. I think there's no one solution that fits all, and it'll be customizable to each and every other platform or system or application that you take to market. However, there is a general rule of thumb that I would offer as my guidance from experience on how best we've been able to do this, presently where I am and previously through experience. Now, first and foremost is thinking through what it is that you would be taking to market. And by this I mean, what are the potential assets or potential loopholes in which you'd be creating by this footprint that you create digitally? Most of the times, the solution is usually led by a certain end, which, and I do hope I do not offend anyone in the room, is usually of commercial benefit to the person that takes this particular solution to market. So what plays second fiddle would have been, how should we have tightened a certain particular part of this application or platform? So some of those things that you'd want to do is ensuring such that from the lowest level in how you take, say, certain solutions or certain technologies to market, is to identify what are those new risks from a cybersecurity, for example, be it even at the transport or communication layer where most of these exchanges would be taking place. Are you opening up with this new solution? Now, knowingly identifying what those assets or what those new capabilities are helps you focus more effort as to determining what do I need to ensure I can build over and above the end problem that I'm solving for. And how you best do this is, at least as far as DTB is concerned, we have what we refer to as a red team. So what this team does is they deliberately have to reenact what would happen in a real life scenario and get into this particular platform, see if they can identify certain vulnerabilities. Yes, I know that would be more of a position of, they would have a higher position, I guess, because of easy access. However, there's a growing community of hackers, both white and black hat hackers in the continent as well as Kenya. And I have seen some very proactive exercises taking place, if you don't mind me digressing a bit. So what will happen is a company like DTB would approach this set of persons, and what you ask these persons to do is that they'll go out for a bounty. If you've played any games, everyone's going after the red flag, right? So effectively what they could do for you is you put prize money on the table and you're trying to subject yourself to a certain set of barrage of attacks to try and see what unknown loopholes that you've not identified and get those resolved. Of course, this is done under certain control mechanisms. It's not open-ended. However, over and above this, I think business continuity management and risk plans have to be in place to ensure that you're constantly checking and rechecking the various facets of the various assets and combined elements within these particular solutions that you take to market. Now, it doesn't take away that security sits first with the end consumer and the responsibility they have to get to understand what it is they have in the palm of their hand. Let's take the example of mobile-based applications. So there's also a responsibility of the persons that take these products to market to ensure that they are constantly ensuring that their end consumers are aware of what risks there are. For all intents and purposes, if I divulge all my information to you, no matter of security I will put in my place will restrict you from taking over an account, for example. So responsibility not only stops with the party that takes their solution to market, but it is also an individual prerogative to ensure that either A, information that is disseminated is well consumed and understood as to what that actually means. So it's a multiplicity of factors, I would say.
All right, thank you. And we do have Dr. Bright Gameli Madwur, who's going to be speaking to us later on in regards to cybersecurity. So you will need your notebooks for that one. I mean, his name already betrays him, Bright. So it will be a good chance for you. So I want to once again go to Rachel, and feel free in case I have asked one personal question and you also feel you want to contribute, just alert me, and then, so it's not an interrogation, it's a discussion. Do you feel that businesses have, because you work with a number of businesses, as Kepsa interact, your members are, are divergent, are different rather. Do you feel that they have a good grasp of this thing called digital transformation, or are we still at, I have a Facebook page, I have a Twitter handle, and we just joined TikTok recently?
I think they do have a good grasp, but unfortunately the myth has been with digital technologies is about systems. So most people understand using CRMs and ERPs as the systems that you're digitally, you've been able to adopt digitally. But aside from the systems, there are also processes. So as a business or as an organization, you have marketing processes, you have procurement processes, and all these are services or processes that can be integrated digitally. With marketing, right now, I think marketing is the biggest function that a lot of private sector are using digitally. So you find that whenever they need, they're able to easily outsource and they're able to use their various platforms. But they're also procurement, they're also hiring services. Right now, a lot of jobs, for those who apply, you'll go to Fuzu, you'll go to LinkedIn. But aside from that, there are also other platforms that are being used whereby businesses can be able to easily source for talent directly. In addition to the resource, there's also the traditional outsourcing, which a lot of businesses have adopted. But with the emergence of technology, there are also digital platforms, which a lot of businesses, internationally, they are aware of. You find that big companies, the cloud factories, have already set up here in Kenya, but they're actually gaining work from international companies who are using their services to be able to perform some of their tasks. So a lot of private sector, there's a little bit of understanding that needs to be a lot more sensitization for businesses to understand that while yes, probably in your small business you might not require the high-tech functions that a lot of service providers are doing, but there's traditional jobs can still be carried out, but they're being mediated through digital technologies. So while yes, they are aware of it, I think a lot more has to be done. And of course, segmenting it according to the needs of what your business is about.
All right, thank you very much. And Bonomoyo, as you play your role, with the media space, have you yourselves, as the council, equipped yourself in terms of just being digitally up to date, such that you're not being left behind by the guys you're oversighting?
Yes, I would say that we've tried our best, really. We, of course, with the major boost around when COVID came, we have taken almost all our services online, apart from, like, if it's accreditation. Even now, when you do the accreditation, you just go online, upload your documents, and you receive a call when you have to come to pick your card. You don't have to physically come or send documents across. When you file stories for AJEA now, you just upload the stories on the portal. The internships, which we offer now, everything is online. So at the level of our services, we have basically gone up to 80 to 90% online. I mean, even the complaint commission now, you just go online, file your complaint, the hearing is virtual, and judgment can be delivered because of all that. So at the level of services we offer, we have done that. But remember, we have the little government challenge. Government is usually very afraid of security. Especially you tell government about digitization when you see a lot of delays and forcing a lot of political statements that people are very afraid about security, because government wants to operate in principles where a document is secured and all that. So I would say, so as an institution, we have done what I would say is humanly possible to really transition to digital, get people working from home, media monitoring, people can do stuff from home, they file their reports online and all that. And also remember now that most of the media houses who we monitor have their services available online. So we have out of about 70 media analysts, about 40 of them work from home. They just do their work and file their reports, and we're able to see it across. So, and then we have a server at Kwanza, where we're able to go into the depository and see what content was put at what time. So we have done what I would say within budget issues and all that. We have been allowed to operate on our own and really moved fairly digital, and moved most of our services online.
All right, and Mercy, as everyone is talking about using their technologies or they are putting content online, one, how can these organizations shield themselves from, or rather shield their intellectual property as they put out content? Because sometimes they may not even know that, oh, I need to have this registered somewhere or something of the sort. So how should they prepare themselves not to get themselves being exploited? One.
Okay. I think the rule of the thumb is copyright and trademark are your friends, especially for the media organizations in the room. I think you can't succeed in that field, especially in the digital context, if you do not prioritize your copyright protection and also your trademark registration. The only problem with these two fields of law is that you have to be very, very active in protecting your intellectual property. There's always a saying in law that equity does not aid the indolent. If you're lazy, then you lose it, because things like copyright and trademark, it's the first to file. The first person who files is the person to whom it belongs. But I feel like that's a very elementary discussion, because all that will get you is to protect what you have. It won't really take you to where we want to go, which is the transformation. We are trying to make money from it. So I'll add another statement and say, while copyright and trademark are your friend, the person who will really, really make you the money, your money maker, needs to be patents. So when you hear about intellectual property, I know a lot of the times beyond trademark, if you're a bank or an insurance company, you don't really think much about it. You don't think that we could have any IP that is worth protecting beyond, our name and our brand and how it looks like. But hear me out. licensing is very expensive. And right now, you will bear me witness, companies are paying hundreds of thousands per month to just license security software, even the algorithms. You're paying millions just to get the license to be able to use these facilities. And it's not that reliable. How many times do you try to log in into the company system and it's down? You know, maybe because you paid and the payment didn't reflect or something like that. That's because we are clients. And what we are paying for is the provider's IP. We are paying for the provider's intellectual property. So, for example, if you need a security solution within your organization, nothing stops you from making your own security solution and then getting a patent registration for that so that you can license it to other people. What you've done in that, in that step is you no longer, first of all, pay licensing to other entities. So your cost for that particular facility is zero, but at the same time, you're making money from it. And the same thing applies to even media entities. Copyright is good, and it's very important to have a catalog of all your copyright. That's fine, but that's not going to make you money. Franchising is where franchising is what is going to really be your money maker. Again, people want to consume content because of how it makes them feel. People want to experience your brand. So one thing we've been unable to do really, and I haven't seen any success story for this, is we're very talented in our small pockets, but somehow we don't transform that into brand experiences. Yeah, so for example, we have creatives, there'll be good singers and there'll be good actors, but beyond that, you can't say what it is to be Dan Mwangi. What product makes me feel like I have experienced Dan Mwangi? Because you've not taken advantage of your brand. But that's where the money is. That's the whole point of intellectual property, is to make money off of your brand. Not just your work, but your brand and what your brand represents. So nobody has an excuse to not take up copyright and trademark. That's the bare minimum. At least protect your work, but really take it to the next level. Let's just stop being passive users and pay monthly fees in licensing and leverage on patents now. Let's get to the next chapter where we are patenting software, we are patenting algorithms for things that solve Kenyan problems. If it's a SACCOs are very Kenyan in nature, so the solutions for SACCOs must come from a SACCO in Kenya. Think about that, yeah.
All right, and just a quick one before I go to someone else. Those of us who are using images on our socials as we're pushing our brands, are there sometimes some fine print that you probably do not see that expose us legally because I use a certain image and I didn't know? I got it from a website called freepik.com.
First of all, if you really mean business, please say goodbye to stock photos. And I know that's a very controversial statement, but if you cannot attest for the history of a photo, I know there's a judgment against Nation Media Group where, unfortunately, you were made to pay a lot of money because the person who had given you the license to the photo was not transparent about whether or not they had paid the person, the model in the photo. I think you have to take these things seriously. You have to have a policy on intellectual property, and a serious one at that. You have to have a policy on your models and have them sign proper release forms. The issue with stock photos and, the stock galleries is you can't vouch for it. You can't vouch for it. Even if it says this photo is free for use if you pay us $15 per month. The fine print, what does the fine print say? It says the terms and conditions only apply to users in the US and in Canada. So then what's going to happen if you take that photo and use it in a Kenyan environment and then you get sued in a Kenyan environment is that that license never extended to Kenya. The model was never paid for their use of that photo in Kenya. So while open source solutions sometimes are good, I think, and I know Rachel is looking at me badly because of small businesses. Yeah, I know you're looking at me badly because of small businesses, but there is a way to achieve the same. I think what you're looking for is an unencumbered picture to use for your advertising, and it's possible to get that without spending millions of shillings, but also you don't always have to download the photos from the internet. But the other thing also is, think about how we consume media nowadays. It's through social media. And that's going to bring a lot of intellectual property problems as well. We want to cover events live. We want to go for graduations and events live. And how much IP is being created in that live event, and who owns it, and have people released model and release agreements? Have they released their rights, their personality rights to be shown in those kinds of videos? You want to engage influencers. Okay, what photos are they using? Who owns the work? When the influencer does the work, are you making them sign proper release agreements? Or even take it a step further, when they use videos and other people's photos, can you vouch for them? So the bigger picture here is really take a step back and have a policy for your organization. This is our IP policy. We will only engage if, you know, the arrangement looks like this. And then also have conversations with your third parties, with your contractors, yeah, similarly. But the short answer to stock photos, it's a very, very slippery slope.
Okay, and I want to ask a question that can be just across. Do we feel that the current changing dynamics of the digital space, do you feel that the regulatory environment is accommodating, or whether it's up to date with the needs and the dynamics of the technology space where you operate from? Maybe Kevin, you could start us off. Do you feel you're the easy target?
Nah, this will have to go off the record, man. However, I think I should be forthright in saying that there'll always be a disparity in how regulation catches up with innovation, because innovation is moving at a very fast pace, and it's really not waiting on regulation and or rules sets to actually be set up. However, the engaging environment in which we're in and how we operate is that with everything that you will do new or is either uncertain, there'll always be discourse or collaboration in trying to understand how best you tackle it. So my personal view is a lot more can be done. But then such is with change, because unless you champion it from the front and choose to be the flag bearer or the one that carries that big bullseye, you should be ready to take certain hits. And in so doing is the ballsy nature in which I think innovation, and especially in technology, requires. Because a failure to which, if we are always to rely on regulation to define where you should go, there may be, and I may be wrong in this statement, there may be limitation. Whereas if you are able to be, you know, courageous enough, take that flag and push it forward as far as say, here's what we think this technology should do, and here are some of those particular use cases. And here's what we think regulation should potentially look at to ensure that it is a more enabling environment to facilitate its particular use. Those kinds of conversations, I think, need to be held more often, not only at the corporate table where you're trying to justify new value, but also with the regulator to see how best can we collaborate in ensuring that that kind of accommodating environment exists. To our lawmakers as well, you have a small part to play in there. Let's not wait for a class action to define new ways of doing things. It actually ought to be driven by what general good could be born out of it, what value should there be for the end party or consumer, not just the monetary value that would be born from large corporate or organizations. So my personal view is that it slowly will catch up, but it's almost there. And it's more of launch and learn rather than let's just take a seat and see what that actually goes into.
Okay, Bwana Omoyo, do you feel the regulatory environment is up to date with the technology space and the changing dynamics of the same?
Yes and no. No, because it's innovation. You can't regulate what you do not know. You could not have set a rule for TikTok when it suddenly comes, then you find that it has algorithms from China and all that, so you can't be that fast. But I would think that if we look at more of facilitative regulations, where like governments and regulators start with doing blueprints and policies at very initial level, and say then you will, you develop rules as you proceed, and largely then concentrating on making very broad level guidelines, so that then they're integrated in the innovations. Otherwise, if you keep, issuing regulations all the time, then the innovation will be stifled. So I think if we have, especially, and if you look at blueprints, because then they even show opportunities for for support, waivers, and all that. Otherwise, if we have, because again, remember regulators are state agencies. If we have regulators sitting in one corner, then people learn how to jump and hop with one leg. Then they say, you're hopping too high, you need to use one and the other. Then that will really stifle. So, and then I think we're almost also getting to a level of co-regulation. But finally, I wanted to state that we have a serious crisis in this country in the sense that we do not have our Silicon Valleys or incubation centers. It is very expensive, for example, when a CEO at NMG to try a new thing because the institution is so big and it's so expensive to try a new thing. But if you had an incubation center in one of these good universities, you go try an idea, it's lesser costs, and then if you can change it, then you now take it and adopt it to an institution. But now, because we do not have such facilities in this country, you really have to, it's like trying to experiment something with a ship in the high seas. It's extremely expensive and it can go wrong. So I think we haven't, I know we have Konza coming on rather slowly, but if we quickly came together and found a way of getting certain incubation centers, it will really help a lot of what is happening. Otherwise, big institutions will die, not because they were not intending to move, but because we do not have an incubation of ideas where you can do this and then, bring it up. And it's very painful when you say that you could try this, but by the time it fails, 2 billion shillings is gone. We could have done it better with much less in a controlled environment, then adapted that. And I feel that when I look at the challenge of big media houses trying to try a new idea, it is, so are you going to recall back the people you fired if it fails? Or you buy a new wonderful printing press for 10 million, then suddenly people are not interested. So what do we do about it now? And nobody can buy it. Or you buy a big TV like we do, a big TV at home, and everybody goes to their phone. So what do you do now? Because, the bigger the TVs have come, everybody at home stays in their room and watches on their phone. So if we found a way of, incubating and moving, that would be. So as I said earlier, we need co-regulation and creative regulation, which goes ahead in the form of blueprints. We have this blueprint and vision and all that. Then the regulation becomes a little part of the innovation. Innovation can run, but the principle of regulation is from time to time we come together and set joint rules of engagement.
Okay.
Something is already being done, I know, with the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner, in terms of ensuring that data has been one of the risks with digital technologies and inventions. The legal system also, the legal players have been doing a lot of work. I think every now and then I see a webinar on webinars or meetings whereby the legal systems, legal players are advocating and advising businesses on what they need to do. And this is also in support of the regulatory environment. The other issue has been with property rights. Of course, with digital technologies, there has been YouTubers, TikTok stars, and all that, and creatives. So seeing how property rights of such creatives can be protected, because that's their livelihood and that's how they're earning their income. Of course, also a better understanding of the digital environment. So this could be, whenever we hear digital service tax and all that, what does it mean and what are the implications?
Okay, as I come to Mercy, just want to let you know that after Mercy responds, we'll open the floor to questions to any of the panelists, and the same for our audience that is watching, that's following the event via the Zoom webinar platform. So we'll be taking some of those questions as we go along. So Mercy will respond about regulatory. Do you feel our regulatory space is up to date with our situation?
Well, I'm a big believer that the law should be technology neutral. And the reason is, by the time you're done legislating on this present technology that we have now, the world will have moved on. Because a piece of legislation takes 2 to 3 years. I mean, technology is already stale in those 3 years. So my view has always been it's better to regulate the conduct and then have conversations with the regulator on how to apply already existing laws to the kind of environment we have. For example, the Data Protection Act has been in force since 2019. Right now, because the algorithms are all the talk and it's a very hot topic right now, it's not for us to start new laws on algorithms. No, it's for us to engage the ODPC and with the ministry on how should we apply the Data Protection Act in this particular field. I think for me that is what is useful for business. Laws are very disruptive for business. When a new law comes in place, it takes time to achieve compliance. Our clients are really, really complaining because they are required to comply with the, with the Data Protection Act, for example, because it's a cost. It's also restructuring. So we shouldn't always be chasing after laws. Sometimes you just need to tweak what you have. Of course, that's said with a pinch of salt because tech does present some unique problems that traditional laws never envisioned. For example, right now, tech labor is going to become a real issue, and the question is, does the Employment Act apply squarely even to tech workers? If I want to restructure in unique ways, will I be caught up, in the old traditional ways of how the Employment Act views employers? So engagement needs to happen in terms of what really requires legal change in terms of the law, or what just needs advisory from the regulator on how to tweak things.
All right. So I'm going to invite any questions. In case you have a question, you can raise your hand, then we'll have a microphone brought to you. I can see there's a lady here. You could take a mic to her. And as the mic is getting to her, I can see we already have a question on our online platform. I will read it. Hello, I'm Professor Luvisia. My question is about the monetization issue on Facebook and other channels like TikTok. Why is it that some countries, for example Kenya, Kenya's content creators cannot earn from their videos? They cannot use important tools like even fundraising. I think that will go to Mercy, but before we respond to that, I want us to kind of bundle the questions so we can be a bit more efficient. So you kindly introduce yourself, the organization you present, then you can ask your question briefly.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Jacqueline Bitutu Wanyande. I'm representing myself.
Very good.
I'm a digital enthusiast, and this is the first digital conference that I'm attending that I'm not organizing. So I'm in heaven. I'm always running around with the conferences. Now I'm a delegate. It's new to me, and I can now understand how refreshing it is to attend and not be running around with the logistics. My question is to Mr. Omoyo. A few years ago, I noticed in the banking sector, not in Kenya but in other places, that there was a struggle between the legacy business and the disruptive business. In the sense that the disruptive business is the future, but does not create the revenues required to run the current business. So legacy is still the breadwinner. So how do you intend to move forward in terms of supporting the new disruptive business, and how do you ensure that the legacy business is still doing what it's supposed to be doing? And shouldn't you be looking at an opportunity to be a leader, since you're doing this digital summit for 3 consecutive years now? Can you maybe set up a unique iHub center where there's all this innovation, where the developers can come, where people can come with innovative ideas, and you take leadership in that market? So, because the government is doing a lot to bring internet to the marketplace, but maybe we need someone who's neutral, not trying to push acquisition of accounts and loans and things like that, but trying to drive our agenda as Kenyans. A place where we can come, think, reflect, create, and what you said in terms of trying to test things in small bits and trying to see without using too much money, because if you make a mistake as a nation, it's big news. But if you make the mistake at the Innovation Center, we can test, fix, and then we can expand it to the bigger market. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Is there any other questions so that we can, or the gentleman next to her, then we can have Engineer Mosonic, then we will respond.
Good morning. My name is Njihia Njeroge. I run a company called Bingwa Services, which and we have a platform that can employ 100,000 people in the next 365 days, reducing the unemployment by 0.7%, and increase the remittances from the diaspora. And thank you, Dr. Wale, for mentioning a similar number that you have in your vision last night. And I do hope that we can have an ear. And so my question is, how do you speak? What do you say? And who do you talk to so that the government can give you an ear and know that you have a solution to their challenges? Because I've tried this for the last 1 year, written to the CAS labor, taken down to directors, had a meeting with NEA, and had a meeting with NITA, also written to the CS who was here, taken down to directors, and sort of it dies there. It doesn't move. So how do you speak to government? Who do you talk to? What do you say? And I think maybe some of you have DTB. I think you speak to the government. Maybe you can help us know how to talk to them and what to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Njehia. Then we can have Engineer Mosonic. Then we can begin the responses.
Okay, thank you very much, Dan. Again, there's an issue. There's a question. My name is Engineer Mosonic. I'm also transitioning from government to private sector, and I'm very, very keen in this digital kind of research and transformation. Maybe there's something which you really ask, a very pertinent question, in the sense that where are we in various industries today as far as digital transformation is concerned? One, of course, I would be able to say that that question has not been adequately addressed, in the sense that, you see, we have the startups which we say they are in the first lane, and then the legacy companies, of course, which they have to go various kind of stages. So the key issue is really understanding what we actually mean by digital transformation. Quite often people see it as a technology, others see it from different perspectives. But in my opinion, of course, it covers the entire kind of business portfolios, people issues and digital issues. So I think that is something probably which we really need to do, and especially to gauge in terms of digital maturity, where are we probably as an industry. And I think, nationally, you can be able to take a forward step in the sense that we have started this digital summit. How far has this impacted in the industries? In terms of leadership, in terms of digital capabilities, how is it has been carried out probably within yourself so that you can be able to engage with the other key stakeholders? So I think that is a question probably which we need to really address, so that in the next summit we can be able to see how far we have gone, especially in various kind of industries represented from various sectors here. Now, the other issue probably which was not again, which is keep coming up is when you introduce these technologies, what impact will it have in terms of employment? The government probably is looking on the other hand in terms of social component, in terms of employment. But you bring in technology, maybe it reduces in terms of robotics and all those kind of things. But I think research which has been carried out is, it has no impact actually. If anything, there are some areas which human being still has a space to be able to drive this agenda forward. So I think that is something probably which we really need to address and challenge ourselves as we move forward. But the key issue is there are a lot of benefits in adopting this digital transformation in terms of customer experience, business model, and all those kind of factors. So I think that is a challenge we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Engineer. So I think we'll begin with the question that was online that we had said would go to Mercy. And in case anyone else wants to add briefly, it's fine. I'll repeat it for the benefit of everyone. Hello, I am Professor Luvisia. My question is about the monetization issue on Facebook and other channels such as TikTok. Why is it that some countries, for example, Kenya, its content creators cannot earn from their videos? They cannot use important tools like even fundraising.
I think I relate that question to what Engineer just said before he sat down. What does transformation mean to us? And adoption isn't equals to transformation. This is what I mean. We've had copyright law in place for many, many years. So in Kenya, copyright is a recognized right, and the courts will enforce it for you. But how many lives have been changed because of copyright? So we haven't really gotten to where we can say digital transformation has taken place in the creative sector. And this is one of the exemplifications of the problem. That yes, you're in a country that recognizes copyright as a right, but you can't monetize your copyright, which then points to a much deeper problem. When you listen to government policy, and I'm actually very encouraged with where the country is heading in terms of what Bonacia said this morning, a lot of our policies seem to be pushing for adoption. We want people to use internet. We want the government to onboard services online. But that cannot be our game plan. We will still be in this exact same position we are in, because just using a service is not going to transform your life. So yes, we have creatives online. They are creating content, but they're not making money from it. Number one, because we haven't prioritized monetizing of IP. So the conversations that take place in terms of even government advocacy, they don't extend to the monetization of IP. They just extend to, you can register, we can teach you how to register, this is protected, but we don't take the conversation ahead. The government and Google, for example, have a very good relationship, which is something that could be solved at policy level. Like just advocate for fair pay. The issue with YouTube sometimes is even more complicated, because you can shoot a video and upload it and not have access to it. A video could be shot in your company or in your country, and immediately you'll be told this video is not available in your region. And these are problems that can only be solved at policy level. The kind of environment these companies, big tech operates in, is an environment that encourages them to look inwards and protect their users and the people who own content in their country. So without advocacy, they're not going to care about us. So I think the conversation that we're having right now is, yes, we have all these rights, we can do all these things, we can take up all these products, but how will they transform our lives? I could create 10,000 videos and still remain poor. Then what have we done? I'm just online. I've not really been transformed. Yeah.
All right. Kevin?
Sure, thanks. Professor Luvisia, good point that you raise, and I'd like to give a very divergent view here. I won't go into the laws of it or the controls that should be in place. I'd rather want to offer a more pragmatic approach that I would want for all of us to think about. We as a people, and I would want to generalize African culture for that matter, have come from a background where problem solving was a communal thing. We are social people. Whenever there was a problem, we would pull resources together and find a solution that worked for us, correct? So why is it so that when we talk digitization, we talk technology, we look outward to find the solutions to our own problems? I think it's a matter of us thinking somewhat differently and finding solutions that we know work for us the best way we know how. So building solutions for us, by us. And not just to talk the talk. For purposes of online content creators or those who would wish to monetize or commercialize their intellectual property or their brands, I believe there are solutions out there. I'll use DTB as an example. We are very large on doing strategic partnerships, and these stem across industry and sector. And how we are taking this back to put you in control of the driving seat is we're embedding finance to some of these particular problems that you solve. And by this I actually mean I'm not coming to build a digital payment solution for you. I'm not coming to sell technology for you. I'm coming to enable the real value exchange that you need from the monetization activity off of such platforms. So be it the journey we shall take with you, be it to build, say, a marketplace of some sort or a digital content distribution platform, etc., we use the capabilities and technologies that we've acquired for purposes of solving other particular problems and are bringing this back to you and saying, hey, Mercy, you're a digital content creator. Here's how we see a certain solution could work for you. And this is the way we're actually trying to also change the view of what you see as a financial service provider, as opposed to it just being, I'll have you open an account. I think someone pointed that out. So this is the take we take right now as a representative of DTB. And this is how I would say to Professor Luvisia, please give us a call. I think there's something we can do for you.
All right. Vanamoyo?
Yes, I will try to touch generally about the questions that came in. I keep giving the example that the guy who discovered electricity died broke, but the guy who discovered the unit measure of electricity and how to sell it is the guy who took away the money. That's the reality. And so we could have a lot of innovation, but until you find where to monetize it and what to sell, they say it's eyeballs and all that. Until you pick that, you will never understand. Secondly, about people accessing government, I was telling Bwana CEO there yesterday that government is like an elephant. Master the art of timing, find the right person and all that. I also came to government as a stranger about 5 years ago, and for 6 months I ran across town. And nobody tells you they do not know or they have no solution. Everybody in government tells you, I know someone who does it. 7 months later, your shoe sole is torn, you are sweaty, and nobody has offered help until you get the right person. So you must really be able to move. Because I think I've also had proposals about people who can create jobs and all that. I was reflecting about Wasili, the taxi hailing app from Nakuru. Of course, we had our own Uber around and all that. Then Wasili does Nakuru, Eldoret and all that. I think some people came together, did the app and all that. So if we found how to count how many people joined that, have joined the taxi service, it's a local based, owned by 2 or 3 young men that I know. How many people have been saved because anybody can hail a cab within the region. So then you'll understand why maybe government is putting free Wi-Fi's and all that, so that anybody can hail a cab anytime and all that. But finally, I think there are few things we missed as a country that we haven't reflected about. We haven't discussed a financing mechanism where good ideas can be financed. That way, we must stop government from doing everything. They do policy and lay infrastructure and let people innovate and all that. And if you have a mechanism like that, like the bidding, I think we saw some young Kenyan who sells coffee win some money partnership and all that, isn't it? We will be able to get some government money into it, private sector. And I think we have a lot of people, some they say they have either old money or line cash, so that then those ideas can be thought about, incubated, and there is mentorship and all that. We have not discussed that. Number 2, as a country, we have not really kept records of what is happening in digital and how many people are benefiting, like the Wasili I said, the Ubers I said. There are very many people benefiting, perhaps into millions. We haven't found how to, we don't have numbers to release and show the humans in that. Just the same we have the many students who do some, they do exams or academic writing and all, something that I think was launched by Kibaki, and then people jumped into it, and a lot of young people are doing that. We haven't really learned how to document, and that is why, and it's a serious African problem, we have people who are in the West who have written books about how they came and discovered us. You know, the people who discovered Kenyans, the people who discovered Mombasa. Yet we were here, we had not discovered ourselves and all that. So we have a problem of documentation and record keeping. We have not thought through the chain of innovation, incubation, monetization, and all that. So we just get into the things we cannot. And finally, in the context of media, we haven't looked at leverage. One of the biggest, the people desperate for media coverage will be government and politicians, whichever way. You could very easily, well, not easily, you could find a way of getting some financing, and the leverage is a negotiated airtime on certain things, of course, without compromising the independence and all that. Say that give us 2 billion, we'll do this. You'll have an insert per week for a period of time, and this or that. So there is that failure of us connecting all the dots. So the dots are all floating, and we very likely have to rely on going out to get some foundation to give us $50,000, and we have many pockets of $50,000 here, but we haven't been able to find a pitching place for that. So I think if we can modify a bit this digital summit, get a few resolutions, a nation media is quite a brand here, get 2 other people to join them hands, and start this. You will get people interested to be joining and listening for ideas being pitched, and they want to try $1 million here for 50% and all that. So I think if we connect all the dots, we have a lot to do. And then we will put government in its place as a facilitator and provider of infrastructure. Because then suddenly government is going to start providing taxis and the printing service, and that's not their work. They should provide fiber and all that. But if we don't then move in and utilize, then will move in and we will lose out. Thanks.
All right, Rachel can give a comment, then we can take our last round. I can see a few questions online, so you could respond, then we'll pick them.
Okay. So within the private sector, we are one of the implementing partners of Jira Digital Project, which the CS mentioned. And the goal is to be able to look at how can we create digital and digitally enabled work for young people and make Kenya a destination for freelancing hub. So looking at the question in terms of monetizing, in our work we've been able to see, to engage different players within the private sector and see how we can be able to create jobs within the private sector who create 84%. So in terms of monetizing, there are a lot of skills that have been created, of course, with innovation, and I believe this was mentioned sometime, was the creative destruction that comes with innovation. So a lot of traditional jobs are replaced with the new ones. So as a content creator, if you're on YouTube and you're looking at how can you monetize, looking at it as a skill, it means that you're able to push for talent. We've seen a lot of platforms that have emerged who are pushing digital marketing, which is one of the most demanded services among businesses, because every business, whether small or large, needs to push awareness of the product that they're selling. Twitter, a lot of influencers have emerged who are pushing products. Every now and then, if you log into your Twitter and you see through your accounts, you see a lot of people pushing products. If you go to others within Instagram marketplaces and Facebook marketplaces, while I understand the question was specifically on TikTok, but if you look at it in terms of the skills that you have and the demand that is there, what opportunities or what avenues are there for you to be able to create and earn a living from that?
All right, so I will read out the two questions I can see here online, have them responded to. The first one is, he says, hello, I am Renson Yeri, a journalist in Kenya working with the Kenya Diaspora Media. My question is on how the YouTube platform is conducting its operations. Why is it impossible for content creators to access customer care services from their office in Kenya? Channels are being closed without any proper explanation, and when one goes to seek clarification from the office, they are sent away just like that. How do you overcome this challenge? So that I think goes to Mercy. Then we also have Nomonde Shezi. Or rather, she says, they say, hello, I'm Muzi Thembekwayo from a company called Human Insights based in South Africa. How do you keep up to date with the changes in digital marketing? All right, so those are the two questions that we have online. Do we have any burning one before we close this round? We'd like to close and go for some tea. We have 1, 2. So let's kindly take the mic. Let's take the mic to, there's a gentleman here and there's another one there. They can ask their questions briefly. Then we shall, here he is.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Joseph Kamiri. I'm from, I work with CIC Insurance Group. And my question is on digitization and the Data Protection Act. Now, you find that digitization have really opened up the customer data amongst organizations and also with partners. And it makes information and data very liberal. Now, when you come on the other side of the data protection, the law is very strict on the use on how you use the customer data in your possession. It's like when the act was being done, it was more to do with physical data as opposed to data and as opposed to digitized data. So the question is now, how do you protect yourself or safeguard yourself from the Data Protection Act as you try to digitize? And this is more so when you want to exploit some opportunities in trying to market and also trying to do sales, things like cross-selling, and especially when you're dealing in a group of companies which have got several subsidiary companies where you are possessing data in those different subsidiaries. So how do you protect or safeguard yourself against the Data Protection Act?
Thank you very much. And we could have the last question here. Then we can put them all together.
My name is Patrick Githaiga, CEO Teltech International. I'll tie my question to what my good friend just said. And maybe this is a question for us in this room to ponder. Does the innovation comes before the law, or the law comes after the innovation? That is one question I'll really love for us to ponder. Does innovation comes before the law, or the law comes and then the innovation? For me, I believe, as we discuss on the Digital Summit and the processes, with the new Data Protection Act that came in force around 2020, to the data processes that have been put in place, all the organizations, they are data processors, from the financial aspect to the digital aspect in terms of media. Data being the oil, or rather for me, I believe data is the new oil for all the industries. How it's being processed, how it's being used, how it's monetized to be a benefit to the organization is the one key thing. My question is driven to the panelists. Banks, currently we have seen how they are utilizing APIs to be able to transform their capacity in terms of deposit mobilization from the app development, rolling backwards from the old way of doing things. My aggregated question on this, in a nutshell, what is your thinking in relation to the data protection which has come in place, to the innovations that have not even been considered by the current law to fit in for the upcoming future, which will also come out from this particular summit in terms of new great things that are going to be discussed in the coming 2 days. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much for that. And so, Mercy, there are a couple that are heading your way. We can tell that there's, by virtue of this being a fairly new space, there's a lot of concerns on the legalities and the regulatory dynamics of them. So there's a gentleman who's saying YouTube channels at times are just closed down without much explanation. I don't know, could it be that there are some laws someone flouted without knowing, or what?
So the YouTube problem is a bigger problem than just violating rights. When you were reading his question, he even said sometimes you try to appeal, you try to contact, and there's nothing. Now, this is the reality of the day. Big tech does not consider African users as equals. I think that's a reality we cannot run away from right now. We are not equals to their American audience or to their Canadian audience. Let us start there. Let us be very, very frank with ourselves. We are not considered a worthy market to even properly invest a presence in. And for us to achieve where we are going, for us to head where we are going, we have to change that. That has to be changed. Because, two things, we are of so much more benefit to big tech than how they treat us. Number one, our users consume content on their platforms like crazy. Everybody's grandmother here is on Facebook. And everybody is using those platforms. So we are creating a lot of value for big tech. Number two, believe it or not, but the algorithms are taught in Kenya. Kenya has become such a hot topic among venture capitalists because this is where machine learning is taking place. The reality of the day is that big tech is built on the backs of Kenyan youth. They're the ones who are polishing up those algorithms. They're the ones who are teaching the algorithms. The reason why there's going to be an augmented reality in the first place is because Kenyans day and night are doing data labeling, are doing data annotation and content moderation, thanks to efforts by, Ajira to train people for the gig economy. So first, let us just be very honest about our reality. The way they apply their laws in other countries is not the same way they apply them here. Now, that is not a Mercy problem or a Dan problem or a Nation Media problem. That's a government problem. When diplomacy takes place, those are some of the conversations the government should be engaging with. While we are happy to play host to a lot of American investors, those are some of the things that, policy-wise, the government should think about. The treatment of our businesses by them, because they want preferential treatment when they come here. Her Excellency was asking even for the dropping of the 1/3 rule, on local content. Okay, as a trade-off, can our consumers and can our creatives receive the same treatment as people in your country? Because without that level of diplomacy, we're never going to achieve that. Australia has been able to pilot a good model where big tech pays the media companies for hot listing, the top 9 lists of news items. Of course, it's going to be a link from Nation Media, a link from Citizen. Shouldn't you get paid for that, right? So, but for you to achieve that level of respect from big tech, truth be told, they are richer than our country, so they have to engage as countries. Can I engage the other question so that I don't?
Okay.
Yeah. So that's on that first issue. On the Data Protection Act, I hold somewhat of a different opinion. We are lucky enough to have an act that doesn't have absolutes. It doesn't tell you, thou shalt not monetize data, full stop. It tells you, for you to monetize data, the following things must take place. So it's given you a cheat sheet. And this is what is going to happen. People who create value out of data are going to be the people who comply. The first compliers are the ones who are going to create value out of data. Because once regulation comes and fines begin rolling down, it's going to devalue your brand. Nobody wants to be in the media every other day for 100 million fines for not respecting data, 100 million fines for, because when people hear data, they hear security. So whether your breach was in data protection or in security, people are just going to assume you're a company that doesn't take security seriously, and then it will devalue your brand. So what my advice would be for you is that please engage highly qualified data protection officers. People who will look at the data protection impact assessment as a tool that can work for you. Truth be told, businesses need data. You cannot survive in a cutthroat competition model without data. You need to have the most accurate decisions. You need to make the most accurate decisions. And for you to do that, you need to be hemorrhaging data at a very unpredicted, pace. But then you're going to attract the regulator if you don't take care. So the solution is in the middle ground. Have a DPO who tells you yes, who tells you this is what you want to do. I will show you how we can be compliant with the law while at the same time achieving what we need to do. I don't agree that for you to, advance into the next level, you're going to have to give up a lot of your business models. No. Again, borrowing from elsewhere, people have been able to leverage on, just data protection, but at the same time being compliant to the law, because the law has told you if you comply with these conditions, then go ahead and make your millions. The regulator will not be after you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, then we can go to Rachel.
I'll try and tackle an earlier question asked by the lady at the center of the room, as well as I try and address Bonagidaiga's question about whether innovation leads before the law comes after innovation. And the earlier question that was stated, I'm not sure we tackled it properly, was legacy vis-a-vis disruptive businesses, right? Now, there's a concept in the tech world and in innovation of digital twins. What digital twin means is usually you're taking the safer bet of trying out what is new to you, or what is supposed to come and change and automate, digitize, what have you. And usually what happens in this type of model is you create adjacent business models to what is your core business. In most cases, and it may be called out as something more nefarious, is if that thing burns, throw it away. So effectively, this has been the halfway house that has made most people most comfortable to both be disruptive within themselves and to try out new things. And in most cases where that is successful, then the runaway business model becomes partly either your main business and or you take on a very different path, start up new companies or branch out from what you'd have been doing as your normal business. So Bonagidaiga, with that consideration that at the end of the day, there has to be a driving force. There has to be a vision for why you'd want to innovate in the first place. And if you have the right conviction to actually justify what that path would look like, of course there's everything else in between, planning, etc., then they both can coexist and happen in tandem. But it's not as easy as I would make it seem. You will have to take certain parts that will be uncharted, and being that flag bearer, I believe what will happen is you will be defining what you think, based on your experience, would be the right path to take. And engagement with lawmakers, policymakers, government, regulators, so on and so forth, is part and parcel of that particular process. And in so saying, I believe it would address it. To our colleague from CIC, how do you capitalize the wealth of data that you may be sitting upon as a subsidiary or as a conglomerate of multiple subsidiaries? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. However, it's really about the blueprint that you put out regards the business that you'd want to run. So data will sit in disparate places. Yes, by regulation, you may not share this data across, but I believe there are simple precepts that you can follow. IT 101, CRUD, create, update, delete, I think R is the review. Effectively, within that very simple process, there are things that I will not say here on record that you could do, but you could see me separately. And I believe the create is the key factor that you go for. Insurance business, telemetry data right now can be captured from a whole wealth of places. Think of the mobile phone that you have in your pocket. Could measure the distance we take here back to our hotel rooms. Is that a risky driver? You could make a decision of it. And you could very well tell from the unique fingerprint of that device who this party is. And if you have a record of this, regardless of which data sets you have, it's anonymized. It doesn't say it's Kelvin, but you can associate it back to Kelvin. And thus, to the question from the online party in Human Insights, such same data is what then can develop newer marketing insights and new marketing drives as to how, for example, you will tap into this particular clientele. Same thing applies to IoTs. There's discussion about agriculture here, right, and agribusiness. Precision agriculture is something that I believe within Africa, not only Kenya, could be something that we can take to the next level. I know we've heard all about aquaponics and all that stuff, but truly when you stop to think about it, it's the culture of how do you actually change up what you've been doing previously. There's a lot of experiments right now with Agra and other players in the market who are trying precision agriculture, just as an example. And IoTs are solving this same problem. And that same data is being churned through machine learning and AI algorithms to actually give further insight. So in the same way, I would say CIC could solve such a problem. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And in the interest of time, I'm going to request Rachel and then Bonomoy to just take a minute each as you close, so that we can go for that tea break before it becomes tea lunch.
So I think I'll quickly also address the disruptive and legacy system, but I look at it different in the sense of innovation. Kenya has a vibrant innovation ecosystem. I think that has already been said and it is known. It's among the big four in terms of the startups who are able to receive funding, with Kenya being the third, which means that our innovations are based according to the needs and we do have viable solutions. The main challenge specifically with disruptive innovations has been the ability to monetize, in the sense that a lot of us here, when we think about digital technologies, we think about a foreign technology. If you think about e-commerce, you're thinking about Jumia. If you think about ride-hailing, you're thinking about Uber. But there are also a lot of local, home-ground platforms and innovations that are addressing our social and our current needs. For businesses, a lot of us know about the informal economy, who probably, they're actively using M-Pesa, but you find that a lot of their transactions are maybe on messages. So they don't have a system that is able to easily arrange that for them to be able to to know how much they've been able to make and how much revenue they've been able to make. So looking at and adopting such level of solutions that are catering to our own local challenges is the way in which we can be able to support the disruptive technologies that are grown locally. In that sense, I know the question was in terms of why do they not last and how are they not able to expand, and what's the challenge between a young startup that has just been formed vis-a-vis a legacy system. And I think if we are able to quickly try to see from around us which solutions can we be able to adopt, I think that we will be able to support our own, and at the same time we'll be able to address some of the challenges that we are hearing in terms of big tech. And I know you've said something about big tech not really caring about us, but if we're able to look at our own local tech, support it, use our skills that we already have to monetize through these kind of platforms, I think we'll already start making headway.
Thank you. Bwana Moyo, 1 minute.
Thanks. I think we have to accept that the government is a depository of ideas and knowledge, and most of them scattered. Everybody has an idea and a proposal. It's in 1 or 2 government offices, so they're not very organized, and government may sometimes be unable to know how to approach certain issues. In the innovation and tech sector also, it's also a depository and an outbreak thing, then they may be able to respond. And then study UN documents and World Bank documents about technology and all that. They will help us also organize our thoughts and be able to channel very targeted proposals, even to Parliament or wherever. Otherwise, we'll have many of these, and then they don't end up into one pipeline. Thank you.
Can I just conclude with 30 seconds and say I'm very uncomfortable with our positioning as a big tech and venture capitalist midwife. I think our future needs to be solutions that make us rich. We need to become big tech. We need to stop assisting big tech. Let's come up with solutions for ourselves that end up taking Kenya to the next level. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your great insights. Thank you very much for your great insights. Mercy Mutemi, Managing Partner of Nzili and Sumbi Advocates. She's also an Internet Law and Policy Advocate. Kevin Joka, Head of Products and Strategy, Digital and Innovation at the Diamond Trust Bank. David Omoyo, the Chief Executive Officer of the Media Council of Kenya. And Rachel Gathu, Private Sector Engagement Lead at the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. And for all of you being part of this, for what has been a morning session of our Digital Summit, day 1 of the 3rd edition of the Nation Digital Summit. At this point, we're going to be taking a break, but we'll be back with more discussions on different dynamics of this digital transformation. I'm just reminding you that the theme this year is Enhancing Africa's Digital Transformation. Thank you, and we take our break. We continue after this. Thank you. Tea is served outside, I believe. So we could take a tea break. It's now 11:39. I would like to propose that in the interest of time, can we be back? How much time do you need to take tea? 10 minutes? 15 minutes? Okay, let's all congregate here at 11:55. 11:55 kindly, so that we can catch up. Thank you. But don't burn. Check. But don't burn yourselves as you take your tea fast, eh?